He had collected whispers from his lips, and it had delayed him. So by the time he got to Highgarden, he found things to be far different than he had expected. Upon hearing what had happened, he had sent a note to Jaime, and soon found himself a room and a place to stay. He was surprised it was Arthur who came to see him, but then it was probably for the best he not be seen for now. "You heard?" Arthur said as he walked into his room. "What the hell happened?" "I'd blame our reckless king, but he blames himself already. Not that it's his fault." "Arthur?" He provoked the boy at the feast, got him to shame himself a little. No, a lot. Why? To give Stark a way out of the betrothal. "What happened with the wolf?" he asked. And Arthur chuckled. "You'll see at the melee. We're to have a trial by combat for a wolf, Richard," Arthur said, and began to explain exactly what had happened. He really pulled a knife on the girl? He did. Gods, had he harmed her. I think we'd have new king already. And a gutted prince, Arthur. That, too. "Who's he facing?" he asked. "Blount," Arthur said, and Richard laughed loudly. "Well, it'll be quick then." "It's to a yield, Richard. Quicker then. What of you? Where have you been?" "Around, trying to find out more about our friend Moctates, and keeping an eye on the fishes." "And?" "The fishes are quiet, though I doubt for long. As for Moctates, I need to speak to Oberyn about his man. We were lucky he was riding yesterday. It's bad enough one reckless king without a reckless prince thrown in," Arthur said, and he couldn't agree more. "How is the king?" "He's good. He'll wish to see you." I wish to see him too. I have some other news for him, some whispers from the Vale about our friend Littlefinger and some moves he's making. I'd better get back. It's good to see you, Richard. I'll speak to the king and arrange for you to meet." "Thanks, Arthur." He made his way to the tourney grounds. Once Arthur had left, he was looking forward to seeing his king compete, and now to see a Kingsguard humbled. He was looking around them when the White Wolf found him. How he did so, he had no idea, and it made him nervous for quite some time as it followed after him. When it grabbed his hand, he almost soiled himself, but looking into its eyes, something made him decide to follow it. The wolf led him past the stalls and into the gardens of Highgarden, down past the labyrinth and around the back, through entrances and hedges and bushes that at first glance seemed to be dead ends. Finally, he saw Walder and Jor's, and knew then the wolf was bringing him to his king. And when he walked past them, he saw him sitting on a bench. "Richard." "John," he said, and the king smiled at him. "We're safe enough here, Richard, though I much prefer you calling me that." "It's good to see you again, my John," he said when the king looked at him. "You too, Richard. Arthur told me you were here, so I sent my friend to find you," he said, rubbing the wolf's fur. "Did you warg into him?" "I didn't have to. We're connected, he and I. It's hard to explain, but I can close my eyes and know where he is, what he's doing. I can warg and see with his eyes, but it's more than that. I don't know if it's the more we've been connected or just the connection getting stronger." "A nice trick. We'll see. Arthur said you had word on Littlefinger?" "I do. He's making some moves in the Vale, buying up debts, Corbray, Waynwood." "Why?" the king asked curiously. If they owe him, they'll need to pay him back. He's not doing this for coin," John said, and he nodded. "That's not the only way people can pay you back. He can't sway the Vale, Richard, not with Jon Arryn alive." "No, he can't." "You think he's thinking long-term?" "I do. Not only is Jon Arryn not a young man, but given Littlefinger's relationship with his wife and what we know of the boy, I think he's laying the groundwork to turn the Vale to him should Jon Arryn fall. Or be pushed, Richard. Indeed. I think it's time you came out of the shadows, Richard. To our friends, at least. Oberyn and Jaime know of you, and Lady Olenna knows of you, if not who you are. I think it's time we all spoke." "Of course. I'm to be married, Richard, Marjorie and I. We've spoken to Lady Olenna, and when it's time, we're to be wed." The king set a soft smile on his face. "Congratulations. A good match, and one that pleases you?" he asked, having already known the deal had been done between the Lannisters and Olenna. "It does. You heard of the prince? Arthur told me he said you were most reckless," he said with a chuckle, though the king didn't join in. "I need him watched more carefully. I underestimated him, Richard. Even with your reports, he's far crueler than I had expected, far more dangerous." "I know his brother and sister, does he? Can we?" "He doesn't any longer," Sir Richard Horp brought it to Barristan's attention. "He's a good man, John, a man we could use." "What makes you say that, Barristan?" he said, and the king nodded. "I need to speak to you all. Gods, there is so much to do. I know we're all here to help you, John. I'm most grateful for it, Richard. What can you tell me of Blount? That Geryon is in no danger whatsoever." He said and saw the king breathe out in relief. "Anything else I need to know?" "Nothing that can't wait, John." "Thank you, Richard. It's good to see you truly." He nodded as the king got up and walked away, then followed after him a few moments later. Soon finding himself back on the tourney grounds, he grabbed something to eat and made his way to the seats. The melee would begin soon, and he did like a good fight, something he'd not see when Geryon fought Boros Blount. High Garden, 295 AC. Geryon. Unsurprisingly, it had been Jenna who came to argue with him first, though how his sister had missed things was beyond him, and when he did explain it to her, he had to restrain her from going to take Joffrey's hand herself. "He did what to my niece? He did what?" she said, her face full of fury. "He pulled a knife. Jenna." Cregan stood in front of him, and then the wolf came. "That damn witch of a niece of ours tried to first have the boy's hand, and then the wolf's pelt." "Where's Joy?" "She's with John," he said. And she nodded. "Who are you fighting?" "Blount." I think the king was embarrassed by the whole thing. Embarrassed? He should be fucking ashamed of it. What in the seven hells is wrong with them? Are they really that stupid? "Arrogant," he replied. "I'll go see my niece, but damn it, Geryon, you can't be risking yourself, even if it's the right thing to do." "I know," he said, and though he didn't believe it, he would allow her to have this. He went to visit Joy and found her asleep, John telling him he'd stay in her room that night. So he and the rest of his family skipped the feast to welcome Stannis and Renly, showing their displeasure as clearly as they could without going full on. He sat down with Jaime and they had discussed Cersei, discussed what to do. Technically, he supposed she hadn't broken their agreement, but he wondered if she needed to be warned again, or was it time to do more? In the end, they decided now wasn't the time. There were far too many eyes on them, far too many people would take notice, and beside the events were in motion already. Nothing could stop what was about to happen. The trial by combat would take place, so they may as well concentrate on that. After eating and then checking on Joy again, he made his way to his room and was no sooner inside than the knock came at his door. "Blair," he said, surprised when he opened it. "Can I come in?" she asked, and he nodded. "Of course." She walked into the room and he closed the door. No sooner had he than she kissed him, catching him so completely by surprise that it took him a moment to kiss her back. Reluctantly, he stopped the kiss to look at her face, not sure why she had decided to come to him then. They had spoken, had eaten together more than once, and had flirted often, but nothing had actually happened between them until now. "Ashara," he asked, "you're an idiot. What are you thinking, fighting for a wolf?" She said, her annoyance clear. "It's not just a wolf, Ashara. It's Cregan's. He stood up for her. Had he not? Had Dusk not?" He paused, taking a breath. "And they wanted to punish him for that, to kill the wolf. No, I'll not have it." "Why are men so damn foolish, Geryon?" I can't be with another reckless man. I won't." "I'm sorry, Ashara," he said, and she allowed him to take her in his arms. "I'm sorry." They stood like that for a few moments before he looked down into her eyes, seeing her face clearly as she looked at him. This time, the kiss was longer, more relaxed, and he felt himself melt in her arms. When they finished, he smiled as reassuringly as he could, brushed her hair from her face, and was relieved when she smiled too. Promise me this is the last reckless thing you'll do, she said. I promise, he replied, and she kissed him again before walking to the door. Ashara, we'll speak on the morrow. Sleep well. You have a Kingsguard to put in the dust, she said. He's barely a man, Ashara, let alone a Kingsguard. Just be careful, Geryon, she said finally as she left. He looked at the door and felt his fingers go to his lips, and he knew he was smiling. This wasn't why he had stepped forward, but he was more than glad of it, more than happy it had brought her to his room. He was woken early the next morning by John and Jamie, so early it was barely light out, and he almost cursed them until he found what they were there for. What do you two want? A spar, John said, and Geryon couldn't help but chuckle. Give me a few moments. After dressing, he followed them down to the gardens, John leading the way with Walder and Jaws and Jamie's own guards following behind. No ghost today? He asked. And John laughed. Lazy sod wouldn't get up, just gave me a look that basically said, go away. Damn, why didn't I think of that? He said, and Jamie laughed. Because you're nowhere near as clever as Ghost, Uncle, Jamie said, and he shook his head wide awake now. The place John brought them was secluded, an empty square with just a bench, and he wondered had Marjorie showed him how to find it. He was surprised when Jamie threw him a tourney sword, and even more when it was to be John he faced, the two of them having never really sparred before. A few moments later he was glad they hadn't. Geryon was a good swordsman, better than good. Sure, his nephew had him beat, and there were far better ones than him out there. But being beaten by a 10-2 named Aold was a humbling experience, one which only got worse a few moments later when Jamie dismantled him also. He looked at the two of them wondering what the hell this had proven, how this was supposed to help him, when he caught both of them smiling at first at each other and then at him. What? You've gotten better, Jamie said, surprising him. You both easily beat me, he said. Aye, but you've still gotten better. John wanted to see if there was anything we could teach you, any pointers we could give. I tried to tell him they wouldn't be needed, not just that I know how good you were, but I know Blount too. And, he asked, looking to John, there may be moves we could teach you, but you won't need them, Jamie said. Besides, you're loosened up and still in practice. I think that's all he needed to see. Jamie continued as he pointed to John, who was speaking to Walder and Jors. After breaking his fast, he spent most of the morning with Joy. John had gone off somewhere alone, and Kevin had come by to wish him good fortune, and so he sat with his daughter, happy to see she seemed in better spirits. He was about to tell her of the trial by combat when she brought it up first. John says, you're fighting the bad man, the one who was with Joffrey? She asked. I am. They wanted to hurt you, Princess, then Cregan, and now Dusk. And you wouldn't let them. You're fighting him for me. John said so, she said. And he smiled and told himself to thank John for that later. I am. John said, you'll win? She asked nervously. I will, Princess. Promise, she said, looking at him, her eyes wide. Promise, he said, and she ran to him, holding him tight. Love you, Papa. I love you too, Princess, he said, kissing her forehead. High Garden, 295 AC. Oberyn. He cursed himself for missing it, for not being there when it all went down, for not seeing a prince put in his place. Ellaria, though, seemed happy about it, relieved that they had not been near enough to do anything about it, something that at first made him angry with her. But the more he thought about it, the more it seemed she was right. Had he been there, he'd have said something, done something. He'd be in this fight today, and for some reason, he doubted that the fat stag would have made it so easy for him. Still, when they'd returned from their ride, he had been furious with the king and prince, that he would use a knife of all things, a knife because a girl dared speak up to him. He had stewed in his anger. Later on, it was made worse by being forced to attend a feast he had no wish to be at, a feast he had tried to get out of, only for John to ask him to go to instead. You're still upset? Ellaria said as he dressed. I am. We should have skipped the feast. John was right. Oberyn, the Lannisters, and the Starks was one thing. Had we done so, also far too many questions would have been asked. John was right. I know. Well, at least O'Barr has calmed down, he said, and his paramour laughed. What was that knight's name? Massey? Sir Justin Massey. He set a smirk on his face. The first to be speared today, I wager. Fitting, is it not? He wished to use his spear on our daughter, and now another will use hers on him, Ilaria said, and he laughed loudly. Then his spirits completely lifted. And that is just one more reason I love you, he said, walking over and kissing her lips. They had ridden out the morning before, Willis giving them some of his best horses and telling them of a place a few miles away where he could put one through its paces. His own horse had come up lame and would be unable to be ridden in the joust, and so he'd gone to his friend, who'd not only given him a replacement but provided some for Ilaria and his girls too. He had enjoyed himself so much breaking the horse and that they'd lost track of time and would have arrived back late for the melee had things not gone how they had. By the time he'd found out what had happened, it was over. Geryon already set up to fight in a trial by combat for a wolf. It had taken him until much later that night to speak to his nephew, the boy, spending his time with Joy, and it reminded him of Elia so much he could barely look at him when he sat on the bed with her. I should have been here, nephew. What could you have done that wasn't uncle? If anything, it's for the best you weren't. What? He asked, a little hurt by that. I don't mean it like that. I mean I need you to go to the feast. No, I don't wish to spend time with the fat stag usually. After this, I have no desire to see him and his children. I know, but for me and the Lannisters, for my uncle and the Starks, our absence will create a stir, but it's understandable. Yours would not be. Besides, I need to know how they act, how people act around them. Olenna could tell you. 2 views are better than 1 uncle. And so he had reluctantly agreed to go, and watched a knight make a fool of himself and paint a target on his back. When he was finished dressing, he and Ilaria went to break their fast, finding his daughters and Sir Damon already doing so, O'Barra sitting with a smirk on her face, thinking of the prey she'd be devouring later. They had no sooner took their seats than it began, his daughters making barbs at each other to grab his attention, though O'Barra seemed above it this morning. What's wrong, daughter, thinking of a gallant knight? He said with a smirk which was soon returned with a frown. On his arse in the dirt? Yes, I am, father, O'Barra said with a devious grin on his face. He was drunk, O'Barra, Nim said, and he shook his head and waited for the fight to begin, glad when it did not. The meal was over far too quickly as he had begun to enjoy the banter, even when the talk had turned to the trial by combat. Can Lord Geryon beat a Kingsguard? Nim asked. I've never seen him fight, nor the Kingsguard. Damon said with a shrug. Your sisters could beat this particular Kingsguard, Oberyn said, and O'Barra scowled at him. Doria and Lareza, he said a moment later, and even O'Barra laughed at that. It was true, though. Over the years, he'd kept well acquainted with the Kingsguard. Barristan would be a match for even him. One he wasn't sure he would win. Sir Aerith, Sir Richard, Sir Mandon were all above competent swordsmen. Boros Blount was anything but. How that man had earned a white cloak was beyond him, and why he'd been chosen to face Geryon he didn't understand. Come, we'll be late, he said. And he looked to Damon and nodded, needing no more words to tell the knight to look out for his daughter in the melee. He had thought of entering it himself. There were some very worthy foes competing, but he had decided not to, decided to forego it and compete in the joust instead. The night he spent with Ilaria after crowning her as queen, one he dearly wished to repeat. They soon made their way to the tourney grounds, and he had to give Mace credit. They really did know how to make a spectacle. Looking around, he found his seats to be close, but not close enough to John and the Landsiders, though sitting with the Northern Lords would be fun in of itself. Once they took them, he looked to see John sitting with Joy, holding the girl's hand in his, and he smiled when his nephew caught his eye. Then, like everyone else, he waited for the king and queen to arrive, for the vicious idiot they called a prince to come, and for the day's festivities to begin. High Garden, 295 AC. Rub it. Not only wouldn't the headache go away, but it was sitting at his table this morning, both of them, and he felt the pounding in his head. He tried to tune them out, tried to ignore their incessant moaning, but found he could not, and so he ate far quicker than he usually did, and much less, before saying his goodbyes to his far less annoying children and calling for Sir Barristan. Had he needed more proof that his wife was a witch and son a fool, then the feast the night before would have been it. He expected the Lannisters wouldn't attend, and he in some ways was happy for it, but to see Ned hadn't, that his family hadn't, while Stannis ground his teeth and Renly and Littlefinger argued about the slight, he shook his head. Slighted, damn right, they should be slighted. After what his idiot of a son had done, he was lucky it had happened when he'd just begun to drink, rather than later in the day. He knew he shouldn't. Knew without Jon there with him that he should not partake as much until the feasts themselves. But it was easy for Jon. He didn't have to listen to Cersei. He didn't have to look at Joffrey and feel the disappointment that he felt. "You asked for me, Your Grace," Sir Barristan said when he entered. "I did. Blount, he's ready?" "He is, Your Grace." "Good. I need you to do something for me, Sir Barristan. I need you to bring Ned to me. He'll argue, no doubt. Come up with some excuse. But I need you to press. It's important, sir." "Of course, Your Grace." "Thank you, Sir Barristan," he said as the knight left. All night he had tried to forget the events of the day. Even buried deep in the servant he couldn't, and was barely able to spend more than once. Usually, when he drank enough, when he was in the midst of his coupling, the world would fade away. His worries, his regrets would all leave him. Last night he had found they had not, they would not, and even without his wife and son's presence this morning, that would have caused his head to ache alone. It was clear at the feast how people felt. Clear in how Stannis looked at his son. And while he may have not been the most dutiful king, he was still king, and he needed to fix this. He needed to do something right. He just hoped Ned would listen, that he'd accept his apology and his offer, that he'd allow for their houses to be joined as they always should have been. "Your Grace, Lord Stark is without," Sir Barristan said, and he bid him bring him in, taking a mouthful of the water he'd been drinking all morning and ignoring the pressure building on his bladder. "Ned, sit, please. Your Grace." "Damn it, Ned. I told you, not you," he said, his voice almost pleading. "Robert," his brother by choice said, and he felt the smile appear on his face. "I'm sorry, Ned. About the wolf. I know it's not one of your own, but your boy was right. I should have listened." "Aye, you should have. I fixed it, though, Ned. I allowed the damn trial to take place. Geryon will win, and it'll be done." "What if he doesn't? Robert, have you thought of that? My youngest son could beat Blount, Ned. Why did you think I picked him? I don't understand." "If I wished to see Geryon lose, I'd have picked Barristan, Ned. If I wanted to see a damn fight, I'd have picked Sir Richard or Sir Aerys. Why do you think I'd pick Blount?" he asked, and saw Ned see it then. "You wish him to lose?" "I need him to lose, Ned. Gods, what a damn fucking mess this has turned into." "Aye, Robert, it has. I wish for a betrothal, Ned, your girl, and my son." "Robert, no. I'll not marry Sansa to that boy. I'm sorry. You're my friend, my king, and I ask you not to force my hand on this," Ned said angrily. "No, Robert, I'll not be a part of it." "Damn it, Ned, let me finish before you take my head off," he said angrily. "I'm sorry, Your Grace. I'll fucking piss on that. In here I'm not your king, I'm your friend, your brother by choice. Had things gone how they should, we'd be good brothers for fuck's sake." "Robert, I wished for a betrothal. Ned, to join our houses. I'm blind, not a fucking fool. I know it cannot be. I wouldn't inflict that boy on your girl, no matter how much I want us joined." "I don't understand." "Myrcella." "Your daughter?" Ned asked, confused. "Aye, my daughter. She's a good girl, Ned, a different sort than her brother. She and Tommen, they're, he said, and had to bite back the tightness of his throat. "Robert, I'm to announce a match for Robb later. He and Lady Winifred." "I'm not asking for your damn heir, Ned," he said, his temper rising with each block Ned seemed to put up. "Gran. Aye, your youngest lad. He seems a good lad, and he's yours, so he'll be just like your other boys. Hell, if young John was true-born, I'd have asked for him, almost did anyway with Maya," he said, smiling as he thought of his other daughter. "Your girl and Evale?" "Aye. When I met your lad, I thought them a good match. I'd have given them a keep or paid for one in the north for them, but she's found herself a match. She's happy, Ned. I'd like that for at least one of my children, so what say you?" "Robert, they're too young." "I'll not marry them now, Ned." "So in the future?" "He's to be a knight, Robert, to squire for his granduncle, the Blackfish. That's even more of a reason. Had I not been convinced alone by him being your son then, that would do for me." "We announce it later." "Robert, not publicly. They're children. Let them be children a little while longer." "Aye, but you agree, you'll accept the match?" he asked almost nervously. "I will," Ned said, and he jumped up and walked from around the table, grabbing his friend in a hug, his smile beaming, and for the first time in so many years, he actually felt happy. "Good, thank you, old friend." "Robert, about the prince?" "Don't worry about the little shit, Ned. I'll sort him out. Now come, we've got a damn melee to attend and the Kingsguard to see knocked on his arse, and I've been damn sober for too long," he said, laughing as they walked to the door. He had done it. He'd done something right, something good, and for the first time he didn't feel the weight of the crown, the weight of being a father. For the first time he felt how he'd always wished to feel. He felt like a king. High Garden, 295 AC. John. After speaking to Richard, he had gone to see Lady Olenna and his uncle, finding only one of those available to talk to, his uncle having been asked to meet the king. Once the giant guards had let him inside, he waited while Olenna spoke to her grandsons, and then for Garland to give him a nod and remind him of their rematch as he left, before Olenna called him into the room. "Your Grace," she said. And he chuckled. "Really, we're doing that now?" he said, and saw the grin on Willis's face. "Very well, John, how can we help you?" Willis asked, and he took a seat. "We need to speak, my lady, all of us, my uncles, both of them," he said when Willis looked at him strangely. "Oberyn is my uncle, also Lord Willis. We need to speak, my lady, on our plans for the future. I also wish you to meet my man, my master of whisperers, though I believe you may have met before." "We have?" she asked, and he nodded. "Sir Richard Lonmouth, my lady," he said, and caught the surprised look on both their faces. "Well played, John." Olenna said, a small smirk on hers now. "I don't know if it's safe for us all to speak." "John, what if someone sees us meet?" Willis asked. "Is there a place we could all meet? Somewhere with more than one way to it?" "The old dining room?" Willis said, and Olenna nodded before he turned to him. "It's in the middle of a corridor and is open at both ends." "That'll work. I can ensure no one sees us enter, my lady,"
he said, and she smirked before he wiped the smile off her face by handing her a note.
"She's... waves." "How do you know this?" "I was a mouse before I was a wolf, my lady. Even in this place, mice move around," he said, and she laughed as she handed Willis the note. "It's a damn shame that warging of yours can't be taught," Olenna said. "We should turn her, my lady, rather than dismiss her. A spy you own is far better than one you've gotten rid of." "He's right, grandmother," Willis said. "You know, he came to me looking for Marjorie's hand. Trying to play a game behind the king's back is our small-fingered friend," Olenna said. "One thing I've learned about playing this game, my lady, it's impossible to do so when you don't understand the board," he said. And she chuckled at that. "I have a request for you, John. Something I'd like you to do for me." "Ask me anything if I can. I will, my lady." "Allery, I wish you to speak to her. I wish you to tell her about you and my granddaughter." "She doesn't know?" he asked, surprised. "She does, but I want you to speak to her anyway." "Then I will, my lady. Can you let me know when you've made the arrangements?" "We will, John." Willis said as John stood up. Lady Olenna, Lord Willis, your grace, Olenna said, and he laughed again as he left. He knew he was cutting it fine, and so he practically ran to Joy's room to ready her for the day's events, happy to find her with Jenna and her children. The others had already gone to the tourney grounds, and so John, Jenna, Joy, and the boys all walked together, Jenna looking more nervous than she should be. "He will be safe, my lady, I swear it," he whispered, and she nodded, seeming slightly more relieved. He held Joy's hand as they walked, and when they arrived at the tourney grounds, he found his sisters and brothers sitting alone with Lady Janelle, and still no sign of his uncle. Taking his seat, he smacked his head over elaborately and turned to Joy, who was looking at him, confused, smirking. He leaned down and whispered in her ear, making her laugh, and then got up and motioned for Loras and Cregan to join him. "John, gone for peanuts," Joy said, giggling as he walked from the seats. They were back no more than a few moments later, and he handed Joy her bag and his sisters theirs. He looked to Marjorie and then handed Loras another for her before he took his seat, and they waited for the king and queen to arrive. His uncle arrived first, and by then John had spotted Oberon and nodded to him. While looking through the crowd, he had seen Richard too, and was glad he was there. Soon they all had to rise for the king and queen, and he found himself glaring at the prince. But they were quickly seated again, and he was happy to see the boy was now out of their eye line. He held Joy's hand when Geryon and Blount entered. The mere fact this man was wearing a cloak made famous by legends was an affront to him. He had lost 2 great knights when he was born, had lost another in the Riverlands. The men who surrounded him were men of honor. Blount was not, and for the first time, John began to worry. Holding Joy's hand even tighter, he closed his eyes and looked for the nearest door, quickly finding one of Willis's hawks. It took him a few moments. The cage door awkward to open with a beak, and he didn't have time to think if it was learned behavior he was teaching the bird. Soon he was airborne, and then he looked down and watched the 2 men stand and get ready to face each other. Joy's grabbing of his hand tightly pulled him from the bird, and he turned to her and whispered it would be all right in her ear, feeling her relax. "My lords and ladies, before the melee begins, we present a trial by combat. This fight is to a yield, not the death, and should Lord Geryon Lannister prevail, then no future action will be taken. Should Sir Boros prevail, then by his grace's orders, the wolf shall be killed. Your graces, my lords and ladies, I give you the trial by combat," the herald said. And as he did so, John went looking for the door again. Looking down from a hawk's eye view on a duel was like nothing he'd ever experienced. He could see things he had never noticed, things in both men's stances, one perfect, the other incredibly flawed. He could see the movements seeming to be slower than with his own eyes, seeming to be more measured though he didn't see them for long. "I yield," Boros said after no more than 2 parries, his sword falling to the ground. John flew closer. A man with no honor can't be expected to behave honorably, and this man was in league with Cersei and the Ponzi Prince. Would he accept defeat and walk away, or would he try something? Wait until Geryon had turned his back. The hawk's wings barely moved as he looked and waited. "Your graces, my lords and ladies, Lord Geryon is declared the victor. The trial by combat has ended," the herald said, and Robert stood up. "Let this be an end to this nonsense. The gods have declared their judgment, Lord Geryon, Sir Boros," Robert said. And Geryon went to move away. He watched as Blount seemed to hesitate for a moment, and then made a move to his hip when Geryon turned away. Screeching as loud as he could, Geryon turned to look up while Boros jumped in surprise, and the knife fell to the ground as the crowd gasped. He looked on as Geryon moved to the knight, the punch and knee to the head coming quickly, and when the man fell, it was clear he'd been knocked unconscious, so John then allowed the hawk to fly free, knowing he'd return to his cage later. "See, Joy, I told you Papa would win," he said, and she giggled. "Peanut, John." "Why, thank you, my lady." High Garden, 295 AC. The melee, Obara. She had looked on as the so-called trial by combat had taken place, laughing upon seeing the fat Kingsguard fall. That he had gone for a knife wasn't a surprise to her. Cowards always waited until you turned your back on them. But the hawk had alerted Jerian, and she'd laughed as he'd beaten the man, even if it hadn't lasted nearly long enough. Looking as the hawk flew off, she wondered, was it John? Had her cousin intervened, or was it just something random? She didn't have time to find out. It was time. The melee was set to begin, and she looked around to see her competition. Lady Dacey was there with her sisters, all three carrying maces, and she hoped not to face any of them today. The painful lesson of the last time still clear. There were men of the Vale, men of the Riverlands and the West, though it was the two giant Northmen she worried about. When she saw him, though everyone else faded from her view, Sir Justin Massey, the smiling knight, she'd make him smile all right, she thought, and almost laughed at it. He had insulted her, and she'd been forced to accept it, forced to do nothing about it, and so she had not. But today, now, here, she would. What's that blonde fucker smiling at? She asked Nim. I think he likes me, her sister said, and she rolled her eyes. Moved on from Sir Damon, sister. A girl has needs, not that you'd know, sister, Nim said, and she chuckled. Some of us are more discerning. Life's too short for discerning, Nim replied, and this time Obara laughed. My ladies, the smiling knight said, and she glowered at him. I was wondering, my lady, if you'd honor me with a dance, he said, turning to Nim. Why would she want to dance with you? Obara asked before Nim could respond. I was asking the beautiful lady beside you. I'm sure if you wait around long enough, someone will eventually ask for you to dance, he said with a smirk. I find I have no wish to dance with you, sir, Nim said, and the knight walked away. I'm sorry, sis, he's an idiot. He was, and he would be her idiot this day. On her spear, he would fall, and she'd enjoy putting him in the dirt. Watch my back. He's the only one I want, she said to Damon as they walked out onto the grounds. Brienne. She was nervous. Though she was of a size with some of the men, taking part in a proper melee was not the same as taking part in the squire's duel or the squire's melee. This was different. You could be hurt far worse. Lady Dacey and her sisters, though, were fighting, as was Prince Oberyn's daughter, Obara. Five women competing against over 50 men. She was proud of that, proud to be one of them. John and Loris had wished her good fortune that morning. Cregan, too, and Dacey had come to give her reassuring words, though with a little added bite also. You'll do fine, Brienne. I thank you, my lady. Dacey, besides, you won't think me a lady when I'm hitting you with my mace, Dacey said, and Brienne laughed with her. As she moved closer to the beginning of the melee, she felt her palms sweat, felt her chest tighten. She tried to loosen up, tried to relax, but found she couldn't, as she was taut and tight like a bowstring ready to snap, and so she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. If she couldn't change how she was feeling, then she would use it. And as she opened her eyes, she began to assess her completion. The great and small Johns, Walder, Lyle Crakehall, Jan Royce and his sons, the Blackfish, Lady Dacey and her sisters, Obara and Sir Damon Sand. She could see Sir Roland Storm and Lord Beric Dondarrion and many others, and once again she found her nerves begin to get better of her. The voice which she heard then surprised her, not that she didn't know it, but that he was as far as she'd aware, far from her only a moment ago. Relax, breathe, and let the first swing of your sword be your guide, Walder said, and she nodded as the herald took to his feet. The Blackfish. His nephew waved to him from the stands, and he resisted the urge to wave back, simply nodding instead. His eyes once again going to the boy sitting with the blonde girl, to Jon Snow, to his reason, or one of them for coming to this damned tourney. That his niece and nephew hadn't been invited proved the truth of Sansa's letter. That other men from the Riverlands had been, proved the truth of how perilous their position truly was. The boy, though, was nothing like Cat had claimed him to be, something he had known for himself for many a year. He'd seen him in Lannisport, heard of him since then. Both Arya and Bran spoke highly of him, as did Sansa and Robb. He'd convinced Ned to arrange their fostering, had offered to Squire Bran himself when he was knighted, and that alone was more than enough. But seeing him with those around him, watching him up close, it was clear this was not a covetous bastard. This was not a boy plotting to steal his brother's inheritance. Your graces, my lords and ladies, welcome to the grand melee of the tourney of Highgarden of 2095 AC, and in honor of Lady Marjorie's name day. He tuned out the rest and instead just concentrated on the boy, on Jon Snow. There was something about him, something familiar, and what it was he couldn't quite place, and it annoyed him. It was clear they'd set his family up. They'd allowed for news of the boy's death to be spread and for it to reach Riverrun. Speaking to Lord Jason the day before, hearing what Edmure had done, what Lady Shella had said, he felt more shamed about his house than ever. To celebrate a child's fall, to make light of the murder of a young boy, that wasn't honorable. To do so at a feast, to stand up in front of you bannermen, and to offer a toast on it, was just plain idiocy. While not a man of faith, he did try to keep to the teachings, and the mother wouldn't look down kindly on a man who reveled in the death of a child, neither with the lords of the Trident. You lost in thought, old friend. I may take the day after all, Jan said, and he chuckled. As long as we do better than Blount, he said, and Jan almost doubled over in laughter. The day I fight so poorly is the day I put my sword on the wall, Brynden. Aye, good fortune to you, Jan. You too, old friend. He took one last look up to the crowd, one last nod in the direction of his nephew, and as he turned from Jon Snow, he swore he saw a ghost. He searched the crowd once again but couldn't find him, and shook his head as the man from the Stormlands came looking for a fight. Raising his sword, he nodded and then chuckled. Why the hell would he think he saw Sir Richard Lonmouth after all these years? Jaime. To say he was nervous was an understatement of epic proportions. Had he not been holding his daughter, he'd be out there standing by her side, sword drawn ready to protect her mother. Of course she'd slap him over the head and hit him with her mace for the thought of it, but still, he'd be there if he could. Given what had almost occurred with Jerian earlier, he'd a right to be nervous, he felt. Thankfully, Jon had been watching, for he had no doubt it was he and the hawk, and as he looked down on Jon and his cousins, on him pointing out to Joy who to cheer for, and to Tion and Walder looking on as he named each of the competitors, he smiled. If he watched out for Gerion, he'd watch out for Daisy, and his wife was more than capable of watching herself regardless. He thought, smirking at the memory of their mourning. Who'd you bet on? Daisy asked. I never bet against family, he said, and she kissed him. And Jon? Why, want to make some coin, my love? Just want to know who I should keep away from. She said, laughing. He reckons Walder will take it. Him or the great Jon, Daisy said. Why? Now that'll be a fight. Be safe, my love. You be safe. I'll be too busy cracking skulls, she said, and moved away before he could slap her pert arse. Look, Joanna, there's your mother. Wave to her, he said, holding her little hand up. Give me her. You'll be far too nervous in a few moments, he heard his good mother say. He looked at her and knew better than to argue, and so he handed his daughter and caught his sister's look as he did so, the scowl on her face, one he was learning to enjoy. Leaning forward, he kissed his daughter's head, and then turning back, he smirked before he stood up. 1,000 gold dragons on Daisy Lannister, he said, and found no takers. Are you not men? He said, and still nothing. Fine 2-to-1? No one took the bet, and he sat down, and his good mother looked at him. Were it not my daughter, I'd have taken that bet, she whispered. But you won't? Never bet against family, Jaime, she said, and he smiled, and then looked on nervously as the fight began. Daisy, God, your husband is an idiot, Lyra said. Aye, he is my idiot. Now speaking of idiots, she motioned to the Riverlands men coming their way. Ladies, if you would be so kind, Lord Patrick said. See how kind you think I am in a moment. Respreen, Lyra said, and the fight had begun. She found herself face to face with 2 Freys and a Bracken, and quickly made for the Freys. The fight wasn't really one, and lasted mere moments as they soon yielded. The Bracken, though, was the Lord's heir and a tougher sort. Brynden, she believed he was called, not that it would matter. She swung her mace, and the more she did so, the freer she felt. the more alive she felt, each rattle of the man's sword, each clang of the metal sounding like an old familiar song. By the time she had beaten him, Lyra had lost, and she was surprised at that, almost as surprised as Lord Patrick was when he yielded to Jory. These Riverlanders had never gone hunting bears before, obviously. She moved on to the next man, a man she knew well. The Strongbow was one of Jaime's lealest men, and a good man, and true she felt. "Shall we, Daisy?" he said, and she was grateful for that. Facing him was difficult enough without the man annoying her too. "I wish you good fortune, Lyle. You too, Daisy." The fight was as hard as she'd ever faced, as tough as she knew. God's his strength. He was like the Umbers, though not as fast as either. But he had the Small John beat in strength, and she was forced back again and again. He was slower, though, when she found she could dodge him, though it wasn't her style. Still, she resorted to it and finally found an opening. The swing was hard and heavy, and when the sword fell, she brought the mace to his neck and saw him smile. "I yield gladly to my Lady of Casterly Rock," he said. And she smiled as she breathed heavily. "I thank you, Lyle," she said, and he nodded as he walked off. "Who's next to face Goatsbane?" She heard Smalljon shout, and she laughed as she looked to see the big idiot swing his sword. "Shall we, sister? Do want to go slay a giant?" she said, looking to Jory. "I really do." Brienne. She had beaten the first couple of opponents easily, and now she looked at the one coming towards her. The bastard of Nightsong dwarfed her easily. He had her beat in all aspects, and she resigned herself to her fate. She'd lose, but would go down fighting. Though the fight never came, instead he was faced with a man of equal size, and she found herself faced with Lord Beric Dondarrion. Looking at Walder swing his axe was incredible to her. More than that, it was poetic. Sir Daeron, Jon, Jaime, they were the best swordsmen she knew. Precision, pace, power, they possessed it all. The older men were stronger than Jon, but none were faster. But Walder, he was more like her. He was big and powerful, quick, and moved with purpose. Where the others danced, he moved methodically, though far faster than he should, and she watched in awe as he and Sir Roland fought. "Were I a lesser man, I'd take advantage of your distraction, my lady," Lord Beric said. "Then I'm glad you're not my lord," she said and bowed. Beric was good, but she felt it only a matter of time, only needing to await an opening, and she'd have him beat. But the sounds of the sword hitting the axe, the sound of the shield being crashed against diverted her attention, caused her a momentary lapse, and she had lost before she knew it. "Yield, my lady?" "I do, my lord. Well met, Lord Beric. I wish you good fortune," she said, and he nodded, moving on. Rather than leave immediately, though, she turned to watch the fight beside her, two titans giving it their all. She had sparred briefly against Walder, had helped take care of his armor and weapons. She had seen him against Sir Daeron, and yet this was the first time she'd really seen him, and he was, to her, incredible. The sheer power he got in those swings, the quickness of his movement. As she watched, she saw the bastard of Nightsong fall, and she loved every single moment of it. Walking back with Sir Roland, she found him to be a graceful loser, a man who took the loss to a better man. "Well, I wish I'd put my coin on him rather than myself," he said, and she chuckled. "We should hurry, sir. We'll miss the rest," she said, and he nodded, and they quickened their movements. My age. Watching her girls fight was both worrying and filled her with pride. Seeing Lyra fall was no shame, something she told her when she finally made her way to their seats. Not that Lyra was listening. She looked out at her two other daughters. Alysanne was the closest to her, Lyra her jokester, and Lyanna her little bear. But Jory and Daisy were her pride and joy when it came to battle. Jory may one day outshine her older sister, but today wouldn't be that day, as she watched her yield to the Small John Goatsbane Umber, and she chuckled at the story of that day. She and Lyra and Jaime all moved a little forward in their seats as Daisy faced the Smalljon. She looked down to see the excited look on Lyanna's face as she and Arya both cheered Daisy on. Each swing of the mace, each crash of the sword, she felt as if she was down there herself. She found her attention so focused on their fight that the world around them seemed to cease to exist. It seemed to falter, fall, and then so did the giant umber air. "Did you see that, Mother? Did you see how she caught him? I taught her that," Lara said, and she didn't bother to correct her, for it was she who taught her that move, as it was she who taught it to Lara too. I saw it wave to your mother, little bear," she said to Joanna. Daisy had allowed the smallgen to wear himself out, his strikes hitting the shaft of the mace, the top of it, but never forcing the mace back. She had used his power and deflected it over and over again, forcing him to change his tactics, and then she had taken his feet from underneath him. She had seen her do it to him when they were children, and he had obviously forgotten. The big oaf, she thought, as she smiled, looking proudly at her daughter. "How many are left?" Lara asked as she looked out, eager to know herself. 6, Jamie said, and she nodded. "The Blackfish, Sir Damon Sand, Lord Beric Dondarrion, the Great John, Walder, and Daisy. 3 of the North," and she felt her pride fill up at that. 3 of the North, and one a lady, one her daughter. That was something to be proud of, she thought. Oberyn. Obara had fine form, fine balance. She was stronger than she looked, but she was rash, impulsive, and worst of all, far too confident. No matter how he had tried to teach her, how he had tried to get her to learn, she continually fell into the same traps. He had tried to let her know that a mistake in a spar, in a tourney, was nothing. It was a lesson that you took on board and used to grow from. But she had not listened. "She is hurt, my love," Ilaria said concernedly, and he watched as his daughter limped from the field. "Then maybe this time she will heed the warning I gave her." "What if it's bad?" Tyene asked. "It's not." She took a knock in the knee, but the Blackfish pulled his strike. "The man is far too honorable to hurt an opponent without cause," he said, and Nim nodded. "She at least took Sir Justin down." "That she did," he said, smiling. She and Daemon had lured the man in easily. He had thought he'd face Daemon, but it was Obara's spear he had felt, and his daughter had ensured he felt it, across his arm, against his leg, and across his back before the man yielded. Though it had made her even cockier, even more sure of herself, and so, while Daemon bid her wait, she'd instead challenged the Blackfish. And as he tried to get to her, Daemon had found himself in his own fight. By the time he'd won, she'd lost. And while Daemon moved to avenge her, she limped out. Daemon never made it to the Blackfish, though, and he cringed at his former squire's fate as he stepped up to face the larger of the Umbers. The Great John was a monster of a man, only dwarfed perhaps by the giant who guarded his nephew, the giant who now faced Lord Beric, leaving Daisy and the Blackfish to face each other. "She's done well, my love," Ilaria said, motioning to Daisy. "She has a fine performance," he said, kissing his paramour and watching as the fights began once again. Daemon tried his damnedest, using speed and movement and trying to tire the man out, but it was a wasted effort. The fight was beyond him, so he looked to see Daisy yield, to see Lord Beric on one knee, and watched as the Great John and Daemon's fight came to an end. 3 men left, and soon to be 2, as the Blackfish and Walder began their own fight. He looked to Ilaria, who had a small smirk on her face, and he leaned in to ask her what she was laughing at. "Did I not tell you of the note?" she said casually. "Note," he said, and she laughed a little more now. "It must have slipped my mind," she said, and handed it to him. "Aunt Ilaria, place your coin on Walder, your nephew Jay." "No, you did not. How much have we wagered?" he asked. "A lot, my love." She chuckled as he shook his head. "John." "Papa," Joy said happily when Garyon arrived. "There you are, princess. Didn't I tell you I'd be all right? Didn't I promise?" "You did, Papa? Peanut?" "How could I resist such a reward?" Geryon said and quickly swallowed the peanut. He looked at him, nodded, and mouthed, "Thank you," and then sat beside him in joy and watched the last of the melee take place. 6 competitors remained, and John looked to Jamie to see the worry on his face when Daisy yielded, a combination of tiredness, rustiness, and the Blackfish's own skill being the cause of her defeat. John laughed at the expression on Arya and Lyanna's face when Bran cheered, neither girl appreciating his brother's support of his future knight. Behind him, Robb, Loras, and Cregan looked on with excited looks while Sansa spoke to Lord Willis, who had moved from his seat to be closer to them. He wished Marjorie could do the same. But while it was one thing to not sit with the prince after how he behaved, it was another to sit with the bastards who caused his misbehavior. He had told her it wasn't a problem the night before, told her he understood, and he did. She did too, but he wished it were not so, that they could sit, hold hands, be together, and he hoped that wasn't the reason he wished to speak to his supporters. That he wasn't thinking how he was based on missing Marjorie or wishing to be more open. That it was instead the behavior of the queen and the prince that was focusing his mind. He got him. He heard excitedly and focused where he should have been, on the fight outside his head, rather than the one inside. "Did you see that, Jon? It's Walder against the Great Jon," Robb said, touching his back. "How much coin did you wager, brother?" he asked, and then decided to twist the knife a little when he saw the look on his brother's face. "He looks very tired to me. I think the Great Jon may take this." "But you said," Robb said before he slapped him hard on the shoulder, making Jon grimace a little. "Damn it, Jon. I used all my coin, you arse." "Don't worry, brother. He's got this," he said, and saw Robb relax while Jerian smirked. "Joy, look, 2 giants are about to fight," he said, and saw the girl look on excitedly. Considering the size of the 2 men facing each other, the power they put into each of their swings, and the sheer brute force on show, it was the technique and the speed which Jon admired the most. The Great Jon moved swiftly across the ground. For a man who was close to 7 feet tall and gods know how much heavier than his son, he moved twice as fast as the small Jon. Walder, though, was even faster. When Jaime had suggested a different weapon for him back in Winterfell, he had told him that with the axe in his hand, he'd be an imposing sight. When he had begun to train him, Jaime said it would only be a matter of time before he was as proficient with it as they were with swords. Looking at him now, Jon could see that time had come. He looked back to see Arthur and Jorah looking on eagerly, to see Jaime watch, and then he saw Oberyn smirk and nod, and he knew then he'd been right. The 2 men swung, greatsword to axe. They used their bodies in between swings, the Great Jon catching Walder with a knee, Walder crashing into the Great Jon with a shoulder charge. Neither man moving from the impact, he could hear the crowd cheer, hear the king cheer. And then he watched as Walder's axe went from his hand. The crowd gasped as Walder dodged. And then there was silence as Walder ducked under the swing and pushed the Great Jon 2-handedly almost 5 feet away from him. He caught the man so much by surprise that the greatsword went in one direction and the Great Jon in the other. Both men were unarmed, but only one was on his feet. And as the Great Jon crawled for his weapon, Walder ran for his. It was Jon's Kingsguard who made it first, and as the Great Jon grabbed his sword and picked it up, as he went to get to his feet, the axe was already laying on the back of his neck. "Yield?" Walder asked. I yield. Jon, Joy, his family, both his uncles, Jaime and the Lannisters, the king himself, and the entire crowd cheered as Walder helped the Great Jon to his feet, both men walking to stand in front of the king, and Walder giving him a nod, which he returned with a large smile. "Your graces, my lords and ladies, I give you the winner of the grand melee, Sir Walder Alliers." Jon went to visit Walder in the tents afterward to bid him his congratulations and tell him how proud he was of his performance. Cregan had gone with Garion and Joy along with the rest of Jon's family back to the keep, the clouds having come out and rain no doubt soon to be on the way, and his Uncle Ned had stopped him to ask to speak with him. Jon had put him off for now, though Oberyn hadn't accepted when he said the same to him and had insisted he walk with him, his uncle still a little upset over the events of the day before. "How much did you wager, Jon?" Oberyn asked. "Not much, but look at yours. He made quite a killing today, didn't you, Jors?" he said, and his Kingsguard chuckled. "I wish we had tourneys every moon. With how good your tips are, I could be rich," Jors said, laughing. As they reached the tents, he had a strange encounter with a man he didn't know which way to take. The Blackfish was Catelyn's uncle, Edmure's uncle, and so he expected him to be like them. But he had only heard good things about the man. His Uncle Ned respected him enough to allow Bran to squire for him, and Richard thought him a good man, though Jon had no experiences with him to judge him by. Prince Oberyn. Sir Brynden, you fought well today. Not well enough, my prince, you must be Jon Snow, he said, looking to him. I am, sir. I believe my brother is to squire for you, Sir Brynden. He is. I heard you had suggested you take him yourself, the man said, staring at him. I did, sir. Should I be lucky enough to earn my own knighthood? Then I'd have been more than happy to have my brother with me, though having him squire for a knight of your renown may turn out far better for his prospects. You think so? The Blackfish said, and Jon could feel his eyes boring deep into his own. I think there are some who would look down upon a bastard knight squire, some who couldn't see past the stain the knight himself would be considered sir. Aye, you have the truth of it. There are fools everywhere, it's true. That there are, sir, if you'll excuse me. I need to go congratulate my own knight, my friend and protector. Very well, we'll speak again, Jon Snow, the Blackfish said, looking at him and nodding. Sir, Prince Oberyn. Sir Brynden. They had only walked a few feet when Oberyn spoke just as soon as the Blackfish was out of earshot. That man is not living up to his name. He's a fish. He should be swimming, not fishing, Oberyn said, and Arthur chuckled behind him. Aye, I know, though he shows no malice or ill intent, more curiosity, I feel. As do I. But what is he curious about? Oberyn asked. That I do not know, my prince. Perhaps something to discuss another time. We have much to discuss, Jon, Oberyn said. They saw Brienne inside the tent helping Walder to remove his armor, the big man sitting down resting on a chair. Jon walked over and patted him on the shoulder and told him how incredible his effort was, surprised to see him blush a little. He would have stayed longer and had intended to when the rains came, but soon the wind picked up, and rather than staying in the tents, they headed for the safety of the keep. As they were walking back, he saw Oberyn stop in his tracks and look at a small cart, a large boy and a huddled man sitting in it. The boy was shivering, already soaked through, and the man looked the worst for wear, his gray robes singling him out as a maester. Jon looked closer and thought he recognized the boy, and then remembered from where he had met him a few years earlier in Old Town. Tarly, Samwell, Tarly, uncle, he said, happy. There was no one else around, standing in the rain, who could overhear him. Marwyn, Jon, that man is Marwyn the Mage. They made their way over to the cart, the maester happy to see a familiar face, and Samwell seeming pleased that someone was stopping them from having to find a tavern to stay in. You had better come with us, Oberyn said, and Marwyn nodded, leaving the cart in the middle of the street. The cart? Jon asked, and Samwell shook his head and shivered before grabbing some things from the back. They hurriedly made their way into the keep, Oberyn joining them in walking to his rooms, and once they dried off a little, and Jon had started a fire for the two wettest of them to dry themselves off properly, he sent for something warm for them to drink. The mage, though, stood up and walked to him, looking him over. It is good to finally meet you, Jon Snow. You too, Marwyn, he said, and the mage walked with him to a quieter corner, while Oberyn walked over to distract Samwell. There is much we must discuss, my prince, much we must talk over. Long have I wished to meet his son. Long have I wanted to see the prophecy revealed. You knew my father? He asked curiously. She. Not as well as I'd have liked, but we exchanged letters, he and I. We met briefly. You have much of him in you. Jaehaerys, much indeed. Can you tell me about him? I can and I will, but we have many things we need to discuss. My former brothers being amongst the most important, as well as an old lady who knows much of you. An old lady? He asked curiously. She. What know you of Summerhall, my prince, of Jenny, and the ghost of High Heart? Why? The boy was nothing like his father. True, he had only met Rhaegar briefly, But even then it was clear there was a sadness in the prince, something that he didn't see in the boy before him. Once they'd been fed and warmed up, Oberyn had seen to having rooms readied for them, and after changing he was brought back to Jon Snow's room. He found the boy sitting by the bed, the large direwolf laying on the floor, and he looked on in amazement. "Remarkable thing to see my prince. Call me John, please. There are far too many people here who'd enjoy finding out who I really am," the boy said, smirking at Oberyn when he took his seat. "John, how much do you know of what Prince Oberyn and Lord Tyrion had me do in the Citadel?" "I know of your work, Maester." "Good," he said, handing him the list, which the boy looked at before handing it to Oberyn. "This is all of them?" Oberyn asked. "It is," he said and watched as Oberyn looked to Jon and nodded. "Ottar and Cates?" Jon asked. "Brightwater, Keep, and Ironwood, Jon." And he noticed the look on Oberyn's face as he realized what that would mean, but it was Jon who was quicker. "So not just the Lord Paramounts, but also their strongest bannermen too." "Indeed. It would seem my former brothers wished to ensure they decided who ran the realm, that should they be unable to control the fate of a house directly, then they'd use their bannermen to do so. They poisoned Ironwood," Oberyn said, and Jon looked to him. "I thought that was you, Uncle." "Ha! As if I would need to resort to such a thing. Lord Edgar was a fool." "Jon, but not enough to kill him. Not for a night with a woman who was not your aunt," Oberyn said, and Jon chuckled. "Then why not explain it?" Jon asked. "I am the Red Viper of Dorne, a legend in my own lifetime. The damage was done, nephew, the insult already blamed upon me. At that point, my exile and Ironwood's slight were already known, so I accepted it and the name," Oberyn said with a bow that had Jon laughing again. "But this was an attempt for what? To force a war between you? Why? What did it benefit them then?" Jon asked when he stopped laughing. "Nothing then, Jon, but perhaps, later on, the bad blood remains, and where there is bad blood," he said before Oberyn interrupted him. "There is someone seeking vengeance," Oberyn said. "So Ottar did this. What of Cates? Why hasn't he done anything?" Jon said before he shook his head and looked at Oberyn rather than him. "Can a woman be, can she be? Is it possible to make a woman wish to couple?" Jon said. And Oberyn and he both chuckled at the boy's sudden blush. "I know of many ways, nephew. Maybe we can talk later," Oberyn said and wiggled his eyebrow, making the boy blush some more. "I mean by giving her something. If one was to give someone something to a woman, would it make her more agreeable? There are things, yes, potions I know of that are available in some houses of ill repute. I'm sure the Maester may know of even more than I. But why do you ask, nephew?" "Delena Florent," Jon said, and even he gasped at that. "Why would they wish the king to have a bastard?" Oberyn asked. "Because he has no children with the queen, uncle." He found himself stunned, not at the audacity of the plan itself, but that this boy had managed to figure it out. Should they have ever needed to do anything about the king's children? Ever needed to out them for their own ends? Then it would put the Baratheon reign in a precarious position. With the Targaryen children having survived, would the realm have accepted Stannis or Renly? Or would they have reached out to the dragons once more? A bastard as an heir would also not be accepted, but a bastard born of a noble lady, a bastard the king had been forced to acknowledge, with the right moves then. House Florent could have found themselves in a very interesting position. Even if it was never needed, it was yet one more arrow they had to fire should the need arise. And he found himself thinking on Theobald in a different light than he once had. The man, it seems, was cleverer than he'd given him credit for. "What do you intend to do with my brothers?" he asked curiously. "Kill them, Maester. What else?" Jon said. And the way he said it without emotion or doubt for a moment had him sweating. "My prince, you know what these men have cost me, what they have cost people I care about," Jon said, looking to Oberyn. How they've sat in the shadows and made decisions which have robbed me of my family. For why? Because they fear magic. It's not magic they should fear Marwyn. No, they should fear retribution, he said. And while uncomfortable, he nodded his head, agreeing with the boy. Tell me about your talks with my father, John asked then, and he was glad of the change of subject. Many years ago, your father wrote to me, searching for what he could find on dragon eggs, on the prophecies of the prince that was promised, on the untold history of your family and of Summerhall. I know of Summerhall. I know what they did. It was them, was it not? John said, and he nodded. I believe so. There is a woman, an old woman. She came to me many years ago and then again, but a few. Her name is Mia Rivers, and her father was Aegon the Unworthy. John said, surprising both him and Oberyn. You know of her? He asked. I met her sister and her brother, though only one in this world physically, John said, and he looked at the boy even more curiously now. Physically? What do you know of wargs and greenseers, of dragon dreams? John asked, and he almost ran to the boy to touch him and make sure he was real. You know of these things. I am these things, Maester. He sat down as John told him of things he had only read about, things he couldn't fully understand how he was able to do. He looked on when the boy warged into the White Wolf, when the wolf licked his hand and shook his head to the questions and nodded when appropriate. And then, just when he thought he had seen it all, John showed him the glass candles. I'm not strong enough to use them fully yet, magically or physically, and I think the magic needs to be restored if you use them too much. But I have seen the past, the present, and I know someone who's seen the future, John said, taking the glass candle out and placing it on the table along with 3 others. You can light them, he asked eagerly, and watched as John picked the black one up and then one by one lit the others in order. He looked on as they saw a silver-haired girl stand with a beautiful woman and a man with a scarred face, fires burning in the background. As he saw children playing in the orchard outside chasing after wolves, he saw sparring and men preparing for the tourney, and a young blonde girl laughing as she and a young blonde boy looked on. He saw Maya on a small hill sitting by a fire looking younger than he had seen her before she changed to an older woman in front of his eyes. Then there was nothing, and both he and Oberyn looked to John. That was now. I dare not look into the past just yet, dare not try to see what I wish to most of all. Your mother, Oberyn asked. My family, John said. That woman at the end, that was Maya Rivers, but you say this was now? Was. She couldn't have made it there by now. She was in Old Town even after I left, he said. And John looked at him. Tell me what she told you. All of it? He was tired by the time he went back to his room. Even though the night was just falling, he was tired. He had talked for what felt like hours, told John and Oberyn things he'd not told anyone before, and had been surprised the boy seemed unfazed by any of it. He just listened and accepted, and he found him to be perplexing, interesting, but perplexing. And he knew he needed to learn more about the prince. Highgarden, 295 AC. Ned. Robert had caught him unawares. He'd been so focused on Sansa that he'd not thought he'd have asked him about another of his children. Given how the prince had behaved at the feast, and then in the gardens, he'd been both appalled and relieved that it would allow him to deny the betrothal without an argument. Not that he wasn't ready for one, using Sansa's age, Cat's overstepping of bounds, and even what he'd been told about the boy as his excuse. He'd been ready. Then he'd been completely blindsided, and he didn't know what to do about it. How would this make John feel? Would he think him betraying him? Going against his wishes? Would he think him in league with Robert still? He was walking to his nephew's rooms to explain it to him when he saw his old friend walking towards him, and he knew he'd need to speak to him now. Howland, I was going to speak to John, but maybe we could talk. I'd like that besides. It seems he's busy anyway. Howland said, and they walked back towards his own room. I'm surprised to see you at a tourney, Howland. Right. You're one to talk, Ned, Howland said with a chuckle. I thought it a good chance to see my family again. Sansa being fostered here, and knowing that John would come, then finding out that Rob was here too, I was even more glad for it. Aye, Jojen and Mira wished to come to see John and Loris again, and I don't know, something made me wish to come. Something is in the air, Ned. It feels like Harrenhal, he said softly. Aye, but right, as if this was how it should have been, Howland said when they reached his room. Taking his seat, he waited, expecting to hear Howland raise up how he'd not lived up to his sister's promise, but his old friend just sat there looking at him before he finally spoke. I was furious at you for the longest time, you know that. So long, in fact, that I almost forgot that we were close once. Howland said. I know. Why? I thought it was for John. Really, I did. I thought it was him I was protecting. I never saw it. Howland Cat, I never saw it. Had Jaime Lannister of all people not come, gods, I don't know, he said, shaking his head. Look at him, at what he's done for himself, for his family, for the North. Almost, I wished for him to go join the Watch. Thought it a noble calling, an honorable life. I was a fool. And now? Howland asked. A lesser one, he said, and they both chuckled. He's the best of both of them, Ned. But he needs us. In the years to come, he'll need us. Have you talked with him properly of the things he's done, the things he's learned? What things? Speak to him, just the two of you. Show him you're his uncle, and that you'll always be there for him. Is that the real reason you came? He asked. I came to see my king, Howland said, smiling. Our king, he said, and Howland nodded. They spoke a bit on their children, and he remarked how Jojen seemed almost a different lad than he had been at Winterfell, something his old friends seemed most pleased about. When he told him of Robert and the betrothal, it was strange, his reaction far different than he'd expected. Even later, as he walked to meet with Wyman before the feast that night, he couldn't get his head around it. Why would John be pleased he'd agreed to this? Lord Stark, one of Wyman's men said when he reached his door. Is Lord Wyman inside? He is my lord, the man said, knocking, and he walked in to find Wyman and Wylas sitting at a small table. Ned, Wyman said, moving to stand up, and he held his hand up and took a seat himself. Wyman, Wylas, I'm surprised to see you here, Ned, though I know young Robb was most pleased when he found out you'd come. Wyman said, Aye, it's been good to see him. I want to thank you, Wyman. You too, Wylas. He can't speak highly enough of his time in White Harbor and of you both, Wendell and the girls too. We're more than happy to have him, Lord Stark. He's a good lad, Wylas said, and he nodded his agreement. At dinner the other night he brought something up to me, something that I'd like to discuss with you both. Aye. Have you eaten? Drank Ned? Wyman asked. I'll not say no to an ale. Has the ice made it this far south? He asked, pleased, when Wylas poured him some ale into a mug filled with ice. So what is it you wish to discuss, Ned? A match between Robb and Winifred, Wyman? They get along well, and I'd be most pleased by it, son. What say you? Wyman asked, turning to Wylas. I'd be more than happy to have Robb as a good son of Winifred, and he seemed more than happy together, so I'm for it. We can iron out the details later, but for now we're agreed? He asked, and both Wyman and Wylas nodded. That I'm most pleased, Wyman, most pleased indeed. As am I, Ned, Wyman said proudly. I wanted to speak to you on some other matters also. Roads, for one. Ned said. You saw them too, Wyman said, and he nodded. We need to do work on our own. Ed, I'll put some coin on the table. I'm sure we can get the others to see the benefits also. Quicker trade is good. It is, before he had a chance to speak on anything else. Though there was a knock on the door, and he was surprised to see Sir Garland enter, the young knight seeming to be even more surprised to see him there. Lord Stark, Lord Wyman, Sir Wylas, Sir Garland. I came with a note from my grandmother for you, Lord Wyman. Perhaps you can share it with Lord Stark too? Garland said, handing Wyman the note, which he read before speaking. Tomorrow evening, someone will come for us, aye? Aye, they will, before the feast, my lord. Then tell your grandmother we'll attend. I will. The note, my lord? Sir Garland asked, holding out his hand, and he watched as Wyman handed it back to the knight who walked and threw it into the open fire. My lords, he said then as he left. He waited until the knight had left the room and turned to Wyman, who was smiling, and he looked to him for an explanation. We're being summoned to a meeting. It seems this tourney, just like Harrenhal, has an ulterior motive. Ned, the king wishes to speak to us all. Is that not a risk? Lady Olenna says the king will ensure it is not. I don't know, Wyman, with Robert here, his men. Is this not just asking for trouble? I have faith that John knows what he's doing, Ned. Whatever it is we need to discuss, it has to be important. Wyman said, and he nodded. Highgarden, 295 AC, Zanza. After the actions of the Kingsguard against Lord Garyon, and knowing that it was John that had warged into one of Willis's hawks, she had wished to speak to her brother. But the melee, then the rain, and then John's own disappearance had meant that she could not. When they arrived back at Highgarden, she had found herself Mira Forrester, Arya, and Lyanna Mormont, all in the company of Lady Janelle, while the rain fell outside. She still wasn't completely sure what to make of the woman. While it seemed as if she was nice enough, she worried she was trying to take her mother's place, that she was trying to be Lady of Winterfell, and yet she wondered if that was really what she was doing. She seemed nice enough, and so she resolved to get to know her better, to spend some time with her, and it seems the weather wished it to be so too. Now I know you three won't care for sewing, Lady Janelle said to giggles from Arya and Lyanna. So instead I want you all to study up on the houses of the north. Lady Mira, perhaps you can instruct these two in that, Janelle said, handing Mira a book. What of us? Mira asked. Well, I think two fine northern ladies fostering in the south may appreciate embroidery more, am I right? Janelle asked, smiling, and both she and Mira nodded their approval. While she'd already gotten Marjorie her present, she still enjoyed to sew, and given she now had a new cousin, she decided to make him a handkerchief, one with a black wolf in the center of it she felt would be appropriate. While Mira worked silently, Lady Janelle sat beside her, and soon she found herself talking on things with her. You're close to your wolf, Lady Sansa, more so than even Arya or Bran. I am. John gave us them, and he's helped me a lot with Fang, she said, and wondered how Lady Janelle would speak on her brother. Your brother? She asked, and Sansa smiled. Aye, have you met him? He's the one with the white wolf ghost. I met him briefly a few years ago. He and Lord Jaime stopped along with the king when he was heading to the west. He's done quite well for himself. Your father is most proud of him, your sister too. As am I, she said, almost defensively. I can see that. And rightfully so too. The direwolf isn't just a sigil of your house, Lady Sansa. It's a gift from the old gods. Have you noticed Ghost's coloring? He's white with red eyes. Aye, the same as the Weirwoods. Your brother, like you all, has been blessed by the old gods. I'm happy to see you are all so close. She found after that she listened more attentively to the things Lady Janelle spoke of, tales of the children of the forest and the old gods, and she was almost jealous that Arya and Bran got to hear them all the time. Had she not been so happy in her fostering, she thought she'd have liked to be taught by Lady Janelle, far better than what Septim Ordain taught her anyway. When the rain stopped, she had almost wished to not go outside, but Elle, as she had by then asked her to call her, had insisted, saying the wolves wished to see their familiars. She stopped before she went outside, though, to thank the woman, finding she could see what it was that Arya and Bran liked about her much more clearly now. Thank you for today, Elle, she said, and she was graced with a pretty smile. It was good to spend some time with you, Lady Sansa. I enjoyed it myself. Maybe we could speak some more while you're here? She asked, and Elle nodded. I'd like that, Lady Sansa. Sansa, Elle, please call me Sansa. Sansa, Elle said, and Sansa found herself walking happily to join the others later on. The atmosphere at the feast that night was much different than it had been at the others. The king seemed in a good mood, and so did some of those there, but apart from the table she was at, it seemed to be almost forced. She, however, was happy that Marjorie was sitting with them and not at the high table, her place up there taken by Garland and Leonette, and she could see how pleased John was to have her at their table also. Her brother was laughing with joy, Kragan, Arya, and Mira, yet she caught him every few moments. Looked to Marjorie and smile, her friend blushing as she smiled back. Rob was busy talking to Winifred, and that left her to talk to Willa and Marjorie, while Loras, Jojen, and Brienne discussed the girls' showing in the melee. "He looks like he swallowed something horrible," Willa said quietly, and neither she nor Marjorie needed to look to see who she was talking off. "He does. Good," Marjorie said, and all three of them broke out laughing. They were giggling among themselves when all of a sudden they saw the man being brought in, the whole room quieting down as Sir Boros Blount was led in by two of his brothers. She and Marjorie looked to the high table and she saw the panicked look on the prince's face. And she knew then it had been him who had told the knight to do it, he who had sent the knight to attack Lord Geryon from behind. As she turned to John, she saw that both Marjorie and he were also looking at the prince, and their expressions showed they knew so too. The king coughed loudly before standing, and she was surprised to see the man look sober, something he hadn't been much since he'd arrived here. "My lords, my ladies, Lord Geryon," the king began as he looked to Geryon. "What happened today shamed me. It shamed the Kingsguard, Sir Barristan, if you will." All eyes in the room were on Sir Barristan as he tore the white cloak off the man who trembled in the center of the room. Folding it up, he handed it to one of the other Kingsguards and nodded to the king. "You have dishonored yourself, Boros Blount. You are no longer a Kingsguard, and I hereby sentence you to serve your time at the Wall. May you find the honor there that you sorely lacked here today. Sir Barristan, remove this man. See to it that he departs this night for the Wall. Be gone, and let it be known that we will not stand for dishonor as long as I am king." Sansa looked around the room and saw some surprised looks. Lady Olenna seemed genuinely shocked by what she'd seen, and it was only when she saw the smirking man with the mustache nod at her that she wondered, why did he seem so happy? John walked her to her room later that night, and she said it to him, saying how she found it most strange. "He's an odd fellow. I don't trust him," she said. "Why not?" "The wolves. What you said about them, Fang. Ghost didn't like him, is it?" "Am I wrong to think so?" she asked, confused. "Bah? No. I told you to trust them, to keep Fang close. I don't trust him either, but see how she reacts, should you find yourself near the man again." "I will. Good night, John," she said, hugging her brother. "Good night, little sister. Don't forget the race is early in the morning." "Are you competing?" she asked excitedly. "I am. Maybe you'll make some coin," he said, and she giggled as she entered her room. Maybe she would. Highgarden, 295 AC. Jamie. His wife had been exuberant in her celebration that night, so much so that he was glad he wasn't competing today. He had woken up early, eager to get a start on the day and to have a morning spar, and given how stiff his muscles were, he needed to work them out far differently than he had the previous night. As he groaned when putting on his boots, he heard his wife's laughter in the background. "I fought in the melee, took a knock from more than one opponent and went head-to-head with the strong boar, and yet you're the one who moves like he was in a fight. Was I too hard on you, my love?" She said, her smile annoying at this hour in the morning. "Maybe I'm getting old,"
"Yeah,"
he said. And she laughed some more then. "Maybe you should come back to bed. I could rub it better for you." "It is fine. It's the rest of me that's old," he said to more laughs. "What hour is the race at?" "Early, before lunch, and then the early rounds of the joust. You riding today?" "No, thank the gods," he said, and she smirked as she walked to the crib, checking to make sure their daughter was still asleep, which she was. "Are you sure you wish to spar?" she asked a little more seriously as she walked over to him. I think I slept badly. The spar will loosen me up." "But I like it when you're tight and coiled and ready to pounce my lion," she said, her hands reaching around to grab his arse. "Don't I know it?" he said, kissing her before he turned to walk from the room. He found John waiting when he got there. Something which had surprised him in their morning spars was that while John would accept pointers from Arthur and would spar with him, he would only ever do so in his direction, almost as if this was their time and he'd not sully it by using it with someone else without his approval. He found he liked that. It made it clear John valued it as much as he did. "You look tired, my lord." "I didn't get enough sleep last night," he said, And John chuckled. "Don't you start. I got enough of that from my wife." "I'm sure you did," John said, and try as he might, the little sod was too fast as he ducked out of the way of the slap he aimed at him. The spar began then, and he found himself smiling as he loosened up, laughing soon at the barbs John was throwing his way, even enjoying the little creases he was able to put in John's forehead when mentioning his own upcoming marriage, years away though it was. By the time he'd beaten him, they were both breathing a little heavy and laughing as Arthur shook his head as he carried the water to them. "You two are like children," Arthur said, handing them the water and chuckling as he sat down. "Sometimes it's good to be a child, Arthur," he said. And John nodded. "We have enough serious stuff to deal with later. Marwan arrived yesterday. He has the rest of the names," John said, and he looked to him surprised he'd not called him about the maester. "Why didn't you come for me? I thought you and Daisy could spend some time together, and what he had to say wasn't leading to anything happening without speaking to you, so there was no need to disturb you." "Did he say anything else?" "Aye. He spoke of Summerhall," John said, and Arthur turned his head to look at them both. "What did he say?" "That the egg came from there. My father found it there among the rubble, and that I need to speak to the woman who sent him there." "It was no woman. Rhaegar got a letter from your uncle at the wall," Arthur said. "Arthur!" "Who got it from Marwan? Who got it from Maya Rivers?" John said, and he found himself shaking his head trying to keep up with things. "Who?" "Maya Rivers, the ghost of High Heart, Aegon the Unlikely's bastard daughter, and Walder's great-great-aunt, sometimes removed." John said, and Jaime looked and finally noticed the large man was not with them, though he'd assumed he'd been given the day off because of the melee. "I don't understand this. My family has been steered in directions by many people, my lord, and for many reasons, be it the maesters and their fears of magic, be it the gods themselves, or people thinking them acting out their will. For nearly 300 years, some presence has been pushing the Targaryens down a specific path. From the moment they left Valyria, my family's been at the whims of gods or monsters." "Why?" Arthur asked. "So the prince that promised, can bring the dawn," John said. "John. Aegon the Unworthy, Aegon the Unlikely, Jaehaerys, Aerys, Rhaegar. What does that lead to Jaime, Arthur?" "I don't know." "Me. That's what it leads to," John said, and he laughed. "I know. I can see how both of you are looking at me, and how crazy I sound right now, how mad this seems. I didn't see it at first. It was talking with Rhaenys that made it clear. Brynden Rivers, Mia Rivers, Gwenny's Rivers, 3 bastard children of Aegon, the Unworthy and Melissa Blackwood, 3 children who possess certain gifts, certain talents, 3 who'd play their part." "Who was Jaehaerys' mother, Arthur?" "Baitha Blackwood," Arthur said. "Arthur! Targaryens and Blackwoods linked for how many generations? What do you know of Summerhall, John?" "Rhaenys showed me Summerhall. I saw a dragonfly. It circled and circled but didn't stay, and then a dragon was born, but it was not the right dragon." "Who was born in Summerhall, Arthur?" "Your father." "Aye. And then he found the egg, which became my sister there." "I don't see it all yet. I can't see it clearly, but the Blackwoods, the ghost of High Heart, Summerhall, it's all connected. I just don't know how or why. There's something missing, and I need to go to High Heart and Summerhall to find it, and then to Dragonstone." "John, you can't. Summerhall and High Heart, yes, but Dragonstone, you can't go there. Stannis, even offering him a trade deal, I can't see why he'd wish you there. Don't worry, my lord. When I go, he'll not be able to stop me." "But, John, it's almost time for my sister to fly." He found himself not hungry when he got back to the keep. His appetite was gone, both from the strangeness of the talk with John and by the knowledge that they'd be meeting later that night to discuss the future. Both he and Arthur suggested John not speak on what they discussed, and he agreed for now, though he said he'd be speaking to Marjorie on it, and Jamie knew he couldn't stop that. By the time it came for the race to start, he had tried to get the memory of the morning out of his mind, tried to focus on enjoying the race itself. Seeing the competitors lined up, he found himself smirking. At least he could enjoy watching John ride Winter and make some coin along the way. He thought, and briefly at least found his mind clear. Highgarden, 295 AC. Marjorie. She sat with her family as the race got ready to begin. Willis was almost as excited as she was. Her brother had a number of his horses in this race, one he'd gifted Renly Baratheon that the Lord was riding. But for Marjorie, there was only one rider she was looking at, one horse, and as she looked down at John, she thought him to look so very small compared to some of the other competitors. But she found herself almost breathless when he stood up in the stirrups, when the wind caught his hair and when his jacket opened and she saw it tied to his belt. She had hoped he'd come and ask her for a favor, ask for something to give him luck, and as she saw it wave in the air, she knew now why he had not. The ribbon blew, and when he looked up, she could see that while he was making it look as if he was not looking at her, he was showing her that he carried her favor always. Your graces, my lords and ladies, we are about to enjoy a display of horsemanship, a race around Highgarden itself with the prize of 1,000 gold dragons and a horse of the winner's choosing, courtesy of Lord Willis Tyrell. Among the competitors in this race are Lord Renly Baratheon, the king's own brother, Prince Oberyn Martell, Sir Baelor Hightower, Lord Mathis Rowan, Lord Patrick Mallister. She found herself drifting off as the herald must have read every single name and could see the king become agitated as he drank yet another mug filled with wine. Get on with it. The king shouted to laughs, and then the herald nodded, and she and everyone else looked down to see the two men raise the flags, and then it began. She looked on eagerly as the horses began to run, trying and failing to see John amongst the now grouped-together competitors. Looking on as they finally disappeared from her sight, she laughed to herself when she realized they were all essentially sitting there, looking at nothing. Something which created an uncomfortable silence, and soon had her father speaking to one of the servants hurriedly, and then after a few moments, they were entertained by the worst fools ever. "Father should have listened to me," Laura said from beside her. "Why? I told him the way he should have done this. This wasn't it." "Then how?" she asked curiously, as one of the fools tripped the other to stifle laughs. "When we were in the north, John and Lord Jamie had a race. They raced to a set of trees a half-mile away and turned around them before racing back. We could see them race off in the distance, and then when they turned, they were coming towards us, but all the way we see them ride," Laura said, and she had to admit it sounded far better than this. Time seemed to stretch on. The fools had already outserved any benefit of having them out there, and the crowd was bored and beginning to get very impatient. The king even more so, and she thought he was about to say something when she heard someone shout, "They're coming." She, like the rest of the crowd, turned to see the dust in the distance. She could make out horses but couldn't see who it was, and she closed her eyes, praying. John was safe, that he'd not fallen or had an accident. Something Loris must have picked up on. "You've no need to worry, sis. John is the best horseman out there. He and Winter are unbeatable." "Did you bet on him?" she asked, and her brother laughed. "Of course I did." She was smiling when she heard it. Joy's excited yell of John's name focusing her attention more clearly on the race. Winter wasn't just winning. She was so far ahead, it was as if the other horses weren't moving. The dust she had seen earlier was from those who were chasing, those who were running their own race, because as the Starks began to cheer, as Joy and the Lannisters began to cheer, she too rose to her feet to cheer for John. As he crossed the finish line, she saw the smile on his face and the favor on his belt, and found herself smiling just as broadly as he was. "I told you," Laura said, and then she heard the king. "Ned, did you see that? By the gods, I've not seen anyone ride as your boy does." "Aye, a well-earned win, your grace," Ned Stark said, smiling proudly. She wanted nothing more than to go to him and help him celebrate, and looked on jealously as Sansa, her siblings, and Joy and Kragan did so. She was glad Laura stayed with her, and by the time the last competitor had finished, John was standing in front of the stands taking the plaudits, something he seemed embarrassed about. They had a break for lunch before the first of the jousts began, and she managed to sneak off to meet with him, finding him in the secluded garden. "You were amazing. You were amazing," she said, hugging him tightly. "My lady's favor is as lucky as ever it seems," he said, and she blushed as he held it in his hand. "I had thought to give you another," she said. And he smiled. "This one is special," he said, and she looked at him, her eyes focusing on his lips as he spoke, the lips she'd kissed and would like to kiss once again. "Your grandmother wishes me to speak to your mother," John said, and her eyes looked to his. "Why? I believe she wishes me to tell her of us. I think she may know already," he said, and she felt both panicked and eager to speak to her mother also. "Should we go together?" she asked, and felt disappointed when he shook his head. "I think your grandmother wishes for your mother to get the measure of me, to see if she approves or not. If we both go, she may not speak so freely." "My mother likes you, she will approve," she said determinedly, and he smiled. "I will make it my mission to see she does, my lady." He bowed and she slapped him on the shoulder. "John," she said, giggling. "Marjorie," he said, joining her. She felt his hand take hers and pull her close, and he leaned forward, her eyes closing as she felt his lips on hers. She could feel his breathing was as shaky as her own, and the kiss seemed to last forever, both of them breathless when it ended. "Forgive me," he said, blushing. "Only if you promise to do that again." "I promise to do so often." "Just Marjorie," he said, and she kissed him herself this time. "Then I shall hold you to your promise." "Just John." He walked her back to the keep, close to her, but nothing that wouldn't seem like two people who just met and happened to be walking in the same direction. She walked to her rooms while John headed to speak to her mother before the jousts began. She was walking down the corridor when she saw him, smelt him actually, the mint lingering in the air proving he'd been there for some time. "Lady Marjorie, I'm so glad I bumped into you," Lord Baelish said, and she smiled and schooled her features knowing this wasn't just a chance encounter. "It's good to see you, Lord Baelish. Is there something I can help you with?" "I come carrying some correspondence. My lady, our prince feels terrible about how he's behaved and is rightfully full of apology and remorse." "As any prince would be, my lord," she said as he handed her the letter. "Of course. But perhaps after reading what Prince Joffrey has to say, you'll see it in your way to see his actions in a different light?" The Lord said, his grinning face beginning to annoy her. What light could threatening a girl with a knife be seen other than an unfavorable one? My lord, let alone the insult to myself. His grace was under a tremendous amount of worry. "My lady, seeing those wolves so close to your person, the fear of the possibilities caused an overreaction that has been misconstrued." "And calling me a lying bitch, my lord? Is that to be blamed on the wolves too?" "It is not, my lady, however. I'm sure the prince's apology is genuine, and no doubt the influence of a fine lady such as yourself can only serve to ensure such events never happen again." "I thank you, my lord. I shall, of course, give his grace's letter every consideration it deserves." "I ask no more, my lady. A fine race, was it not?" he said, smirking even more now. "Now, it was indeed, my lord, a worthy victor. Indeed, a most talented man is young Jon Snow. Most talented, not content with opening mines and building ships. It seems even horsemanship is something he excels at." "Some people excel, my lord, others do not. Truer words have not been spoken. My lady, I shall leave you to ready yourself for the joust. Perhaps we'll see the young man excel there. Though really a boy of his age shouldn't compete, one never knows what may happen," Lord Baelish said, and she found herself rushing to her room. Once inside, she threw the letter on her desk and found her breathing coming short. She sat down and began to feel faint, feel the tears in her eyes, her worry overcoming her. She reached for some water and knocked the mug with her hand, watching as it fell to the ground and smashed, her guard quickly running into the room at the sound. "My lady, are you well?" "My grandmother. Please fetch my grandmother. I am well, but please ask her to come," she said, and the guard nodded as she tried to catch her breath. She grabbed another mug and filled it, and then drank it down so quickly she felt it drip down her chin onto her dress, one thought in her head overriding all others. "Willis," she said softly. "Highgarden, 295 AC, Allery." She had been asked to host a tea she more than wished to attend. Her good mother, her sister, Prince Oberyn's paramour, Lady Dacey, and her mother and Lady Jenna. Knowing that all of them knew of Jon Snow's true name, making her even more excited for it, even more eager this day to hurry along. The horse race was not as exciting as she'd have wished for, as she couldn't but agree that Mace should have listened to their sons. Both Garland and Willis had said it would be so, and Loras had even suggested a different route. The idea of the race around Highgarden, though too good for her husband to see past, in the end, they'd sat and waited, and only for the fact that Jon had won it would have been a pointless exercise. Of the first 6 horses, 4 had been bred by Willis, including Jon's horse, Winter, and when Mace had heard that he had soon been speaking up their son's achievements, she had cried off the public lunch after the race, feeling a need to get changed. And as she finished and was heading back, Pala knocked to tell her she had a visitor, that Jon had come to see her. "Send him in, Pala," she said, and took a seat while she waited. "My lady, forgive me. I didn't wish to intrude," Jon said, and she wondered where the white wolf was. "Your friend not with you, Jon," she said with a soft smile. "Ghost is with his siblings. My lady, having them all here, they are most eager to spend time together before they part, and it's safer having them in numbers." Safer? Given what happened with the prince, I worry someone may wish to gain favor by harming one of them, he said, shocking her. "What did you wish to speak to me of, Jon?" "I think we know that's not my name, my lady." "Indeed. I ask your forgiveness, my lady, in not telling you. I meant no disrespect or slight. I wasn't sure who I should and should not tell, and I feel now I erred in not telling you sooner." He said, and she was surprised by how chided he sounded. "I understand, Jon. You prefer Jon?" "I think it's best, for now, my lady." "I understand, Jon. I'm not one who cares for politics. I understand it's needed, and my good mother revels in playing this Game of Thrones. I do not. I wish for only one thing. Do you know what that is, Jon? For your children to be happy," he said. And she smiled. "Indeed, my Loras thinks very highly of you, as does my Marjorie. I believe you feel the same, do you not? Loras is my best friend. My lady, he is someone I trust, someone I would do anything to protect. And Marjorie, I wish her to be my wife, my lady, to be my queen. Olenna has told me such, and were I to refuse my permission?" she asked curiously. "My feelings for Marjorie are true. My lady, I would not seek another, but I would not wish to go against her family's wishes either. While I would want the choice to be hers alone, this is not the world we live in. Should I not have your approval, then I would be forced to accept it." "Up much to easily, Jon Snow," she said, chuckling. "I never said I'd give up my lady, only that I'd be forced to accept it. I would do everything in my power to show you that your refusal was a mistake, that my feelings, that Marjorie's feelings, are what's most important. I wish my daughter to be happy, Jon. Can you promise me that?" "I promise that I'll never dishonor her, nor disrespect her, nor love another, my lady. For me, there is just Marjorie." "As for her, there is just Jon." she said, laughing. You know of that? You know of that, he said, blushing. I am a mother, John. I know of my daughter's heart. I care not for the crown. Oh, I can see why Robert is a bad king and why his son would be a terrible one, but I care not for it. My daughter being queen is my husband's dream, my good mother's. All I wish for is for her life to be happy, and I believe you'll make her happy. You have my blessing, John, and my support. I thank you, my lady. John said, his smile beaming. Now, if you'll escort me, I believe we have a joust to attend to. The joust was the early rounds, and it was dull, she found. Most jousts were. She loved the pageantry, loved the balls and feasts till they could go on, and she particularly looked forward to Marjorie's name day itself. But the joust, the riding down the tilt, the crashing of lances she found not to her taste. She was happy when the day came to an end, eager to get to the tea with the ladies, and now even more so after speaking to John. That he had her daughter's affections was clear. It had been clear from King's Landing, clear perhaps from before that, as she remembered the presents he sent Marjorie and how she reacted to them. That he shared them, felt them too, was even more clear to her now. She worried about the fight to come, about war and what it may mean. But what she didn't worry about was John. Of him she had no doubt. He would be a fine husband for her girl, one she was more than happy to call a good son one day. Sitting in the room she watched as they came in, each of them ladies she'd spoken to but briefly, each of them powerful in their own right. As they sat, they looked to her and to her good mother who had joined them, and she found herself eager to begin, eager to speak on plans for the future, to speak to ladies who would help to shape the realm. Ladies, shall we have tea? She said and smiled at the nods. Highgarden, 295 AC. John. Marwyn had sent his mind in a million directions, the things he said forcing him down into thoughts he wasn't sure were his own. When he'd gone, he had lain down on the bed and went looking for her, went searching and was glad he'd not taken her advice, glad he was tired as it was rainy as he sought, not Rainix. He had found her on the cliffs. She was walking down a rocky staircase towards a cove, the sea out in the bay leaving the sand uncovered. You are troubled, little brother, Rhaenys said. More than troubled. More than troubled. Why? Who are we, Ray? We are dragons, little brother, Rhaenys said, smiling, and he reached out and took her hand in his. He looked at her, her dark hair, her purple eyes, the woman she would have been, the woman she should have been. We are pawns, big sister, pawns in a game. It's all we've ever been, he said. And she looked at him smiling. You've only just realized that, she said, and he laughed. There are two games, little brother, the Game of Thrones and the Game of Life. Both have the same rule. You win or you die. And you will win, little brother. You will win for all of us. How can you know this? How can you not? She said, looking at him, and he felt her hands on his face. Our family is you, Jaehaerys. You're the end of our line. You're the meaning of it all, what it's been leading up to. Don't you see that? I don't understand, Ray. I don't understand any of this. Daenerys dreamed and we came here. Aegon wished and we conquered. Have you ever asked yourself why, little brother? No, he said honestly. We needed to be here. We needed to unite the 7 kingdoms. Only a dragon can rule Jay. Only a true dragon can bring the dawn. You are the prince that was promised. Everything that happened has led to you. Can't you see? You're saying it's my fault, that I'm the reason. If so, then it's not worth it. It's never been worth it, he said, shaking his head. The slap was hard and heavy, and his sister's anger clear. How dare you? How dare you think so? You are worth it. You're worth it all. Everything, anything, you're worth it. Don't ever speak like that again. Don't ever say that to me again. She said, her tears falling. Ray. No, Jay. Whatever it took for you to be in this world, it's worth it. Whatever the cost. If I knew, I'd have gladly paid it. I don't know what it is you're to do. I don't have all the answers. But look at me, little brother. You are worth the price, do you hear me? You are worth any price, she said, taking him in his arms as he sobbed on her shoulders. How long he stood there, for he wasn't sure. But stand he did, and eventually he looked at her, and leaned forward to kiss her cheek. "I love you, big sister. I love you too, little brother," she said, hugging him tightly. It had been still dark when he woke, and he had ended up going to the library, he and Ghost and Jors. He had looked and been happy to find the books on his family, and he had read them eagerly. It didn't take long to see the pattern. Blackwoods and Targaryens linked by blood, and it would seem by magic too. His line went directly to a Blackwood by blood, and he was connected to them magically. To Nan, to Bloodraven, and to Maya Rivers. Blood and magic, fire and blood. There was more, but he couldn't figure it out. Summerhall was the work of the Maesters, but something else had happened there. Something different, and he needed to find out what. So he had spoken to Jaime, to Arthur. He had read up more and spoken to Marwyn some more, but still, he couldn't get to it. He had been tempted to use the glass candles, to look at it, but it drained him, it tired him, and he had a race to prepare for, and so he had done that instead. It was while warging into winter, while beating the others, he had felt something at the edge of his mind, a presence trying to get in, and it had almost cost him the race. His eyes closed as he tried to reach out to it. "Sing the song, young prince." "What song?" "Sing the song for me, and I'll tell you what I can. My time is near done. Sing me the song so I can be happy one last time." "What song?" "The song of my daughter, Jenny's song." Later, as he walked to the meeting, his mind was in turmoil. Ghost stood at one end of the hall, and Jaime's guards at the other. He had warged into mice and checked the rooms, finding Littlefinger laying in his and Robert with a whore in his own. Joffrey was whining to his mother, and their guards were busy. As he entered the room, he looked around as they stood to their feet. "Please take your seats," he said, his uncles and his aunts. Lady Olenna, Lord Jaime and Lady Dacey, Lady Mage, Lord Howland and Lord Wyman, Sir Richard and Sir Barristan, who was wearing a grey cloak which he found amusing, Lady Jenna, Lord Geryon and Lord Kevin, and sitting in the corner looking at him worriedly was Marjorie, and he wished to go her, but saw that Loras held her hand. "Many years ago at a tourney, my father wished to depose a bad king. Lord Varys, finding out, and for his own reasons, told my grandfather, and the realm suffered because of it. I am here because of that tourney, but there are those who are not. I ask that we bow our heads and remember the fallen, remember those who would have been here, those who should have been here," he said, and he bowed his head. He pictured her dark hair and her smile, his silver hair as he played the harp. He pictured her holding a babe, his silver hair barely showing, and he pictured a girl playing with a black cat. Rhaenys may be right, but he didn't need to be happy about it. He didn't need to not feel the sadness he felt at them not being here, nor could he ignore the part of him that felt him a bad substitute for them all, for any of them. "Marwyn has given me the names of the maesters involved, the ones at the Citadel, and the ones in houses throughout the realm." "You have all of them, your grace?" his uncle Ned asked. "I do. 2 have already been dealt with," he said, and Lord Wyman looked to him. "Ah, your grace. They were killed. My lord, Caliote, spent years poisoning Prince Doran and Princess Elia amongst his other crimes. Crelen's crimes were even more heinous. As for the others, Lady Jenna, if you would," he said, and smiled when she spoke. "The Maesters are responsible for so much evil that it's hard to know where to begin. They fostered hatred between houses. They've steered houses down the path of their choosing regardless of the consequences or cost to that house," she said, looking to Ned and then him. "But they have spent most of their existence trying to end House Targaryen." "How?" Lady Mage asked. "Jon?" Jenna asked, and he nodded. "In many different ways, but the worst of them were visited upon Queen Rhaella," Jenna said, and he interrupted. "My grandmother had 3 miscarriages, 3 stillborn babes, and 2 who died within the year of being born. None of these were natural events," he said, and heard the gasps from Mage and his uncle Ned. "Jon, I'm sorry," his uncle said, and he nodded. "I wish I could wait and deal with them, that I could try them and see justice done. I wish that I didn't seek vengeance, but my blood calls out for it, and even did it not, these men are too dangerous to be allowed to live." "You mean to kill them?" Howland asked. "I see no other choice, but I bring it to you all. I think this is right. This is just, and this is the safest course of action. Is there any here who think me wrong? I don't hold with killing men without a trial, Lord Kevin said. But when I heard what Craylan did, what he cost my family, never have I been so glad a man was already dead. These men didn't just seek to harm the Targaryens. This is not just Jon's vengeance, it is mine too. Ned, Howland said, looking to his uncle. They killed my mother. Let them face the vengeance of the old gods. I say aye. Lord Wyman said, and one by one they agreed until it got to Olenna. How do we do this? She asked. Richard and I have come up with a plan. It'll take some time to put in place, but it will work. I give you my word on that, my lady, he said, and she nodded. I don't doubt it, your grace. With the maesters dealt with, it fell to speak to Robert, and here he found himself surprised by what his Uncle Ned told him. He did what? He asked after his uncle had told them. He never offered the betrothal for Sansa, Jon. He instead offered one for Bran and Myrcella, his uncle said shakily, and he began to laugh. Jon, Jaime asked, how does Robert come up with a better plan than us? He said, chuckling. Jon, Garion asked. Lady Jenna, when we spoke on Myrcella and Tommen, you asked me what our plans for them were. At the time we had none, just having her married to my cousin and giving them a keep of their own work for you. You would keep the betrothal? Ned asked. What are your plans for Bran, uncle? He used to be squire to the Blackfish, and then I had thought of Moat Cailin or Sea Dragon Point. What about River Run? Garion asked, and all heads turned to him. My lord? Jon said. House Tully will not keep that land, not given what they've done. Lord Garion, he said angrily, and found to his shock it was too late. What have they done? What? Ned asked. Uncle, please not now, not here. I'll speak to you on it in private, he said, and his uncle nodded. River Run, your grace? Lady Jenna asked. Would that be acceptable? He asked Jaime. As Lord Paramount? Jaime asked. No, I don't think so. We may need to name someone else. Even House Tully led by Bran may not be accepted, he said, and Jaime nodded. We can sort the particulars out later. Does it work for you to have Myrcella and Brandon Stark wed? Lady Olenna said, and he was relieved to see that each of the Lannisters seemed happy, and his uncle nodded, though he could see he was thinking on what Gerion had hinted at. Which brings us to Robert and to Joffrey. What of Tommen, your grace? Jenna asked. Sir Barristan, if Tommen was to squire, do you think it possible you'd be sent to be his Kingsguard? No, your grace. It would be Sir Aris or someone else. What if the Queen insisted upon it? He said, and the knight looked at him. I can see that, I'm sure, if the Queen insisted on it. Yes. Tommen, he's safe for now? He asked. He is, your grace. Jon. I don't understand, Jaime said. When I'm knighted, I'll need a squire, will I not? He saw the smile on both Jaime's and Jenna's face. Kevin and Gerion looked to each other and nodded, and he saw Lady Olenna's smirk. You think you can get Robert to agree? Oberyn asked. I think if it's presented right we can, and we have time to do so. Which brings us to Prince Joffrey, he said distastefully. He may not be as big a problem soon, your grace, Sir Richard said. Why? He asked. My latest whisper tells me that Robert spoke to his brother about fostering him. His brother reluctantly agreed. Renly won't help the boy, Jaime said, and Richard chuckled, his other brother Lord Jaime. The laughter was heard all around the room at the idea of Joffrey being sent to Dragonstone, Joffrey to be fostered by Stannis Baratheon. Even if that didn't straighten him out, it at least took him from King's Landing. My lords, my ladies, my father planned to hold a grand council, to have the realm declare him to be king, and to have my grandfather removed. I too would like to do so, but all in this room know that's not to be, Robert, Jon Arryn. They will not give up the throne even if the realm orders them to do so. No, so it's to be war then, Howland said, and he nodded. It is. My sister is almost ready to allow me to fly with her. Soon she and Ligaron will be too big to hide, the whispers too loud even for Sir Richard to hide. I do not know when, but we have time to prepare, and prepare we shall. We shall. My lords, I ask for your support to begin to make ready plans to take back the throne stolen from my family. You have mine, your grace, Oberyn said. You have House Tyrell, your grace, Olenna said, and Loras. And then Marjorie smiled at him. The North stands with you, my king. His Uncle Ned said, and Howland, Mage, and Wyman nodded. The West is yours, Jaime said, as did Jerian, Jenna, Kevin, and Daisy too. We stand with you now and always, Arthur said. Arthur! Now and always, Barristan and Richard said, looking at him proudly. Looking to Marjorie, he smiled, which she returned, and he nodded. I am humble, my lords, my ladies. I vow to be a better king than the last we've had. I swear to do what I can to make this realm what it should be, to make people's lives better. I swear it on fire and blood.